Lieutenant Ethan Hayes stood at the viewport of the USS Horizon, watching the stars streak by as the ship slowed from faster-than-light travel. His stomach tightened with nerves. Today wasn't just another day on a deep space mission. Today, humanity would meet the Veldari for the first time. Lieutenant Hayes, report to Briefing Room 3. Commander Olivia Bennett's voice announced over the ship's comm system. Ethan straightened his navy blue uniform and ran a hand through his short brown hair. At 32, he was younger than most officers in his position, but his natural gift for languages and communication had pushed him up the ranks quickly. Still, nothing in his training had prepared him for being humanity's voice to a completely unknown alien species. The briefing room doors slid open with a soft hiss. Commander Bennett stood at the head of the table, her gray eyes serious as she nodded to Ethan. "Good. You're here," she said. "Take a seat. We don't have much time." 4 other officers sat around the table, all looking as nervous as Ethan felt. On the wall screen was an image of what appeared to be a tall, thin alien with skin that seemed to shimmer with blues and greens. "This is all we have on the Veldari," Commander Bennett said, gesturing to the screen. "Our probes have captured limited footage. What we do know is that they're highly advanced, possibly centuries ahead of us technologically. They've been watching us for decades before deciding to make contact." She tapped the screen, changing the image to a star map showing the horizons, positioned near the edge of explored space. "We're here. And here," she pointed to a red zone spanning several star systems, "is Krell Empire territory. The Krell have made it clear they consider this sector their hunting ground. They've destroyed 3 of our survey ships in the last year alone. We need allies in this region, which makes this meeting with the Veldari crucial." Ethan raised his hand. "What do we know about their culture, their communication style?" Commander Bennett's expression tightened. "Very little. Initial observations suggest they're extremely reserved. Their body language indicates high levels of social anxiety. They avoid direct eye contact, speak softly, and use technology for most interactions rather than face-to-face communication. Your job, Hayes, is to make them comfortable. No pressure, but the future of Earth might depend on it." Ethan swallowed hard. No pressure at all. 3 hours later, Ethan stood in the ship's main docking bay, watching as the airlock cycled. Behind him, Commander Bennett and Captain Greg Miller waited with a small honor guard. Everyone was under strict orders: move slowly, speak quietly, and maintain distance from the visitors. The airlock door slid open. 5 Veldari entered the ship in a tight group. They were even taller than Ethan had expected, standing nearly 7 feet high with slender bodies that seemed almost fragile. Their skin was the most striking feature. It rippled with colors like oil on water, currently showing deep blues and purples that shifted with each nervous movement. The Veldari wore simple robes that flowed around their thin frames. They kept their large almond-shaped eyes downcast, their long fingers intertwined in what Ethan guessed was a self-soothing gesture. Captain Miller stepped forward, keeping his voice unusually soft. "Welcome aboard the USS Horizon. I am Captain Miller. On behalf of Earth and all humans, we are honored by your presence." The tallest Veldari nodded but didn't speak. Instead, one of them held up a small silver device that projected a hologram of Earth's universal greeting in several languages. Commander Bennett nudged Ethan forward. "Lieutenant Hayes is our communications specialist. He will be your guide during your stay with us." Ethan approached slowly, hands visible at his sides in a non-threatening posture. "Hello," he said gently. "I'm Ethan Hayes. I'm here to help with any needs you might have while visiting our ship." One of the Veldari finally looked up, briefly meeting his eyes before quickly looking away. This one was slightly shorter than the others, with more delicate features. The colors on her skin, Ethan somehow felt certain this was a female of their species, swirled in complex patterns of deep blue, making her look like a walking night sky. The group moved toward a small table where translating devices had been set up. As they approached, the female Veldari reached for one of the human devices but fumbled it, nearly dropping it to the floor. Ethan moved instinctively, catching it before it fell. It's okay, he said with a small smile, offering it back to her. These can be tricky. Here. The Veldari took it with trembling fingers. Up close, Ethan noticed intricate markings on her ceremonial robe, tiny symbols that might have been writing, woven into the fabric with threads that caught the light. Without thinking, Ethan commented, "Your robe is beautiful. The patterns look like stories." The room went completely silent. The other Veldari froze, their skin patterns shifting rapidly to a shocked pale green. Commander Bennett stiffened behind him, clearly worried he'd made a terrible mistake. But the female Veldari's reaction was the most surprising of all. Her skin, previously deep blue with anxiety, suddenly flushed bright gold, a color they had never seen on Veldari skin before. The glow was so intense that it lit up the dim docking bay like sunrise. Then, breaking all protocols they'd been told about Veldari communication customs, she looked directly into Ethan's eyes and spoke in perfect, unaccented English. "You can see the stories?" she asked, her voice melodic but strong, not the whisper they'd expected. Ethan blinked in surprise but tried to recover quickly. I can see that they must tell stories. The way they're arranged seems intentional, like writing or symbols." The other Veldari were now making small clicking sounds to each other, clearly distressed. The female raised a slender hand, silencing them without looking away from Ethan. "I am Neri," she said, still maintaining eye contact in what must have been a shocking breach of their social norms. "I am the delegate of cultural exchange." Captain Miller stepped forward. "We weren't aware that you spoke our language." Neri finally broke her gaze from Ethan to acknowledge the captain with a small nod. "Most do not. I have studied humans extensively." Her skin continued to pulse with gold light, though less intensely now. Commander Bennett approached Ethan from behind and whispered harshly, "What did you do?" "I just complimented her robe," he whispered back, confused. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. The other Veldari had moved slightly away from Neri, as if she had done something shocking. Yet Neri herself seemed suddenly more confident, her posture straighter, her movements more deliberate. "Perhaps," she said, addressing the whole human delegation now, "we should proceed to your meeting room. It seems there is much more to discuss than we had planned." As the group moved toward the ship's conference room, Ethan noticed that Neri stayed close to him, while the other Veldari maintained their distance from both her and the humans. Whatever he had done by complimenting her had changed something fundamental about this first contact. In the conference room, as Captain Miller began the formal introductions, Neri leaned slightly toward Ethan and whispered, "In 10,000 years of contact with other species, you are the first to see the stories in my family weaving." Ethan whispered back, "I didn't know it was important." Neri's skin rippled with a pattern like golden stars. "That is precisely why it matters, Lieutenant Hayes. That is precisely why." Commander Bennett shot Ethan a warning look from across the table. Whatever was happening here was definitely not in the diplomatic handbook. But as Neri took her seat at the table, still glowing gold among her blue-toned companions, Ethan had the distinct feeling that his simple compliment had just changed the course of human history. The meeting broke up after 2 hours of tense discussion about trade possibilities and shared scientific knowledge. Throughout it all, Neri had spoken directly to the humans while the other Veldari remained silent, communicating only through their translation devices. The contrast was striking. As soon as the Veldari delegation was escorted to their guest quarters, Commander Bennett grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him into a side corridor. "What the hell happened back there?" she demanded, keeping her voice low. "You were supposed to be careful, not throw out random compliments." Ethan shook his head. "I didn't know it would cause such a reaction. I just noticed the patterns on her robe and commented on them." Bennett ran a hand through her short blonde hair. "Well, you did something. The Veldari delegation is in complete disarray. Their leader contacted me privately and requested that you be temporarily removed from diplomatic duties." "What? Why?" Ethan felt his heart sink. "They won't say exactly, but that's not all." Bennett looked around to make sure they were alone. "Neri has requested a private meeting with you." Ethan blinked in surprise. Is that allowed? Normally, no. But she was very insistent, and right now we're walking on eggshells. Captain Miller thinks we should agree to the meeting, but under observation. We need to understand what's happening. 2 hours later, Ethan entered one of the ship's smaller meeting rooms. Neri was already there, standing by the viewport, her skin now a calmer shade of light purple with gold streaks. She turned when he entered, and unlike the other Veldari, looked directly at him. "Lieutenant Hayes," she said. "Thank you for coming." Ethan nodded, trying to act normal despite the strangeness of the situation. "Of course, though I'm not sure why you wanted to meet with me." Neri gestured to a chair. "Please sit, I must explain what has happened." As Ethan took a seat, he noticed that Neri seemed different now, more confident, less withdrawn than before. She sat across from him, her long fingers laced together on the table. "In my culture," she began, "compliments are not given lightly. They are considered deeply intimate exchanges, typically reserved for those who share lifelong bonds." Ethan felt his face grow warm. "I had no idea. I apologize if I overstepped." Neri's skin rippled with a pattern that seemed almost like laughter. "No need for apology. What makes your compliment significant is that you gave it freely without knowing its meaning. That shows true sincerity." She leaned forward slightly. "You must understand, Lieutenant. The Veldari weren't always so reserved. Centuries ago, we were much more open, more like humans in our emotional expression. Then we encountered the Meridian species." "I don't know them," Ethan said. "No one does anymore. They betrayed us after we shared our technology with them, used it to attack us, nearly wiped us out. Since then, Veldari have protected themselves by withdrawing, by hiding our true thoughts and feelings behind protocols and technology." "That explains a lot about your delegation's behavior," Ethan said. Neri nodded. "What they don't know is that I've been studying humans for years. Your species fascinates me. How you share emotions so openly, take risks with your trust. It's why I learned your language directly, rather than relying on translators." Ethan was surprised. "You learned English in secret?" "Among other human languages. My position allowed me access to your broadcasts, your literature." Her skin shimmered with what might have been embarrassment. "I've been watching your people for a long time, trying to understand if you were different from the Meridians." "And are we?" Ethan asked. "I believe so. Which is why when you spoke of the stories in my robe, She paused, searching for words. "In our culture, we call it gold seeing, recognizing something true about another that they have not revealed themselves. The color you saw my skin turn is extremely rare among my people. It means I've designated you as a truth speaker, someone incapable of deception." Ethan laughed nervously. "I'm flattered, but that's a lot of faith to put in someone you just met." "It is not faith. It is pattern recognition." Neri touched her robe gently. "This contains my family history going back 12 generations. No other species has ever recognized it as writing. They see only decorative patterns. Yet you, with no knowledge of our culture, saw the truth immediately." Before Ethan could respond, the ship's alert system blared. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside. "Security alert. Unknown vessel approaching," announced the ship's AI. "All personnel to stations." Ethan stood quickly. "I need to report in." Neri rose too, but instead of appearing alarmed, she seemed resigned. "It's the Krell, isn't it?" "How did you—" "Because they've been following us," she said simply. "This is why the real diplomatic meeting must begin now." Ethan and Neri rushed to the bridge, arriving just as Captain Miller was receiving a transmission. On the main screen was the face of a Krell commander. Reptilian features set in a permanent snarl, scales gleaming metallic under harsh lights. "Human vessel," the Krell commander hissed. "You have something that belongs to us. Surrender the—" "Veldari delegation immediately." Captain Miller stood firm. "The Veldari are our guests. They don't belong to anyone." The Krell commander's yellow eyes narrowed. "The Veldari possess technology that rightfully belongs to the Krell Empire. Surrender them, or we will take them by force." The transmission cut off. Captain Miller turned to see Ethan and Neary standing at the bridge entrance. "You shouldn't be here," he said to Neary. Neary stepped forward, her skin now a deep, steady purple. "Captain, there's something you need to know. The diplomatic mission was not entirely what it seemed." Commander Bennett joined them, her expression grim. "Explain." "I am not merely a cultural delegate," Neary said. "I am the defense minister for the Veldari Collective. And I must tell you why we really came to meet with humans." The bridge went silent as all eyes turned to her. 3 months ago, our deep space monitors detected a massive Krell invasion fleet assembling. Their target is Earth. Captain Miller's face paled. "Earth? Why?" "Because you're becoming too powerful too quickly," Neary explained. "The Krell don't tolerate potential rivals. They've done this before to emerging species. Our council debated whether to warn you. Many thought humans were too unpredictable, possibly even dangerous. So this meeting was a test," Ethan realized aloud. Neary nodded. "To see if humans could be trusted with the defensive technology you'll need to survive. The Krell fleet will reach Earth space in approximately 60 days. Without our help, your planet has no chance." Commander Bennett's eyes narrowed. "And now? What's the council's decision?" "There is no time for the council now," Neary said. "The decision falls to me." She turned to Ethan. "Your simple act of seeing the stories in my robe revealed more about humanity than months of formal diplomatic talks ever could." The ship shuddered as the Krell vessel fired a warning shot across their bow. "Captain," the tactical officer called out, "they're powering up weapons, shields at maximum." Neary's skin began to glow with that same golden light Ethan had seen before. "Lieutenant Hayes, I need to know if your people are ready to form a true alliance, not just with diplomatic words and empty promises, but with trust and shared risk." The ship rocked again as another blast hit their shields. "Shields at 60%, called out the tactical officer. "They're targeting our weapons systems." Captain Miller looked from Neary to Commander Bennett to Ethan. "I'd say right now would be a perfect time for that alliance to start. What exactly are you offering, Defense Minister?" Neary's golden glow intensified. "Everything you need to survive what's coming. But first, we need to survive this encounter, as If on cue, the Krell ship fired again, and this time the hit was devastating. The bridge lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency lighting. "Weapons offline," reported the tactical officer. "Shields failing." Neary turned to Ethan, her golden glow now the brightest light on the bridge. "Lieutenant Hayes, I need you to take me to my delegation immediately. There's something your captain needs to see about the shy aliens you've been so carefully handling with diplomatic gloves." Ethan and Neary raced through the dimly lit corridors of the USS Horizon. Emergency lights cast everything in an eerie red glow. The ship shuddered again as another Krell blast hit. "The rest of your delegation?" Ethan asked as they ran. "Do they know who you really are?" "They know," Neary replied, her golden skin illuminating their path. "But they don't know what I've decided." They reached the guest quarters where the other 4 Veldari huddled together, their skin shifting in patterns of fear, dark blues and greens swirling frantically. Neary spoke to them in their own language, a series of musical tones and clicks. At first, the other Veldari responded with what sounded like arguments. Their skin colors flashed in protest, but Neary stood firm, her golden glow never dimming. Finally, the tallest Veldari nodded. As one, all 5 Veldari removed their outer robes. Underneath, they wore close-fitting bodysuits laced with what looked like circuitry. Ethan's communication device buzzed. "Hayes, where are you?" Commander Bennett's voice was tense. "With the Veldari delegation," he answered. "We're coming to help." "Help how?" "The Krell have breached our hull on Deck 7. They're boarding us." Neary touched Ethan's arm. "Take us to where the Krell are entering your ship." Ethan stared at her. "That's crazy. You're diplomats, not soldiers." The tall Veldari made a sound that might have been a laugh. Neary's expression remained serious. "Lieutenant Hayes, remember when I told you my people weren't always so withdrawn? There's something else you should know. Our social anxiety isn't just psychological, it's a side effect. Side effect of what? Of what we can do when we stop, holding back. The ship rocked with another impact. The lights went out completely for a moment before the backup systems kicked in. We don't have time to explain, Neary said. Take us to Deck 7. Ethan made a quick decision. This way. They moved, quickly through the ship, passing crew members rushing to battle stations or damage control points. As they approached Deck 7, they could hear the sounds of fighting, shouts, energy weapons firing, metal striking metal. They turned a corner and found chaos. A squad of human security officers had formed a defensive line at a corridor junction, exchanging fire with Krell boarding parties. The Krell were massive, 7-foot reptilian warriors in black armor, their scaled faces twisted in battle snarls. Commander Bennett was there, firing a hand weapon while shouting orders. She saw Ethan and the Veldari and her eyes widened in anger. Hayes, get them out of here, this is an active combat zone. Before Ethan could respond, Neary stepped forward. The other Veldari formed a line behind her, their skin now pulsing with synchronized patterns, gold like Neary's but with streaks of red. Commander Bennett, Neary called out, pull your people back. Bennett looked incredulous. Are you insane? If we give up this position, the Krell will have access to our entire ship. Trust me, Neary said, her voice carrying a new authority that made even Bennett hesitate. Pull them back 20 meters, give us space to work. Something in her tone made Bennett reconsider. Fall back, she ordered her team. 20 meters. Regroup at Junction 4. As the human defenders retreated, the Krell surged forward, thinking they'd won the position. 7 of them charged into the corridor, weapons raised. Neary looked at Ethan. Stay behind us. Then she turned to her fellow Veldari and nodded. What happened next left Ethan speechless. The 5 Veldari stood shoulder to shoulder, raised their hands and began to hum in perfect harmony. Their skin glowed brighter and brighter until Ethan had to shield his eyes. The circuitry in their bodysuits lit up with the same golden energy. The lead Krell warrior laughed, a harsh guttural sound. The shy ones think they can fight? He snarled in broken English. We will take you to our labs, little Veldari, just like the others. Neary's eyes narrowed. You've taken your last Veldari. She spread her fingers wide. A blast of pure energy erupted from her hands, so bright it turned the corridor white. The lead Krell was thrown backward, his armor smoking. The other Veldari followed suit, each directing precise energy blasts at the Krell warriors. Ethan stared in amazement. These were the same timid aliens who had earlier been afraid to make eye contact. The Krell fought back, firing their weapons, but the Veldari moved with unexpected grace and coordination. Where one would direct an energy blast, another would create what looked like a shield of light. They worked in perfect unison as if sharing one mind. Within minutes, the Krell boarding party lay defeated. Not one Veldari had been hit. Commander Bennett and her security team approached cautiously, weapons still ready. What was that? Bennett asked, looking at the fallen Krell. Neary's glow dimmed slightly as she turned to face the humans. That was Veldari defensive arts, what you might call our battle mode. But your people, everyone says you're peaceful, shy, non-confrontational, Ethan said, still struggling to process what he'd witnessed. We are peaceful, Neary confirmed. We choose to be. But peace is not the same as weakness. She gestured to her glowing skin. What you see as anxiety, our color changes, our avoidance of direct contact, these are methods of control. We contain enormous energy within our bodies, Lieutenant Hayes. Energy that, if unleashed carelessly, could destroy much more than a few Krell warriors. The tall Veldari spoke up, using a translation device. Our social protocols aren't just cultural, they're necessary. When we interact too directly, our energies can become unstable. Neary nodded. After the Meridian betrayal, we learned to be careful with both our trust and our power. We withdrew not just emotionally, but energetically. The colors you see in our skin are visible signs of the energy we're constantly containing. A ship-wide announcement interrupted them. All hands brace for impact. The Krell vessel is preparing to fire main weapons. Neri turned to her fellow Veldari. They communicated silently for a moment, their skin patterns shifting in what Ethan now realized was a form of communication. "We can help," Neri told Bennett. "Take us to your ship's bow facing the Krell vessel." Bennett hesitated only briefly. "This way." They rushed to a forward observation deck with a large viewport showing the Krell warship. It was massive compared to the horizon, its weapons array glowing as it prepared to fire again. "Everyone stand back," Neri instructed. The 5 Veldari formed a circle, joining hands. Their skin began to pulse with light again, but this time the glow spread and intensified until they were surrounded by a sphere of golden energy. "What are they doing?" Captain Miller asked, having joined them on the deck. "I think they're saving our lives," Ethan replied. The Veldari began to hum again, their voices creating harmonies that seemed to vibrate the very air. The energy sphere around them expanded, pushing outward through the hull of the ship, not damaging it but passing through it like light through glass. Outside in space, a massive energy shield formed around the entire USS Horizon just as the Krell ship fired its main cannon. The deadly beam struck the golden shield and dissipated harmlessly. Inside, the Veldari strained with effort, their bodies trembling. Sweat beaded on Neri's forehead as she looked at Ethan. "We can hold this shield," she gasped, "but not forever. Your ship needs to move, now." Captain Miller didn't waste time asking questions. He hit his communication badge. "Bridge, full reverse thrust, get us out of their firing range." The ship lurched as the engines engaged. Slowly, they began to pull away from the Krell vessel. The Krell ship adjusted its position, trying to maintain its targeting lock. It fired again and again. The energy shield held, though this time the Veldari visibly flinched with the impact. "They're following us," Bennett reported, checking a nearby console. "We can't outrun them." "You don't need to outrun them," Neri said through gritted teeth. "You just need to give us one clean shot." "Shot?" Ethan asked. "Your shield can attack, too?" Neri met his eyes, her golden glow now tinged with red. "What do you think happened to the Meridians after they betrayed us, Lieutenant Hayes?" The implication sent a chill down Ethan's spine. These seemingly shy aliens weren't just capable of defense, they possessed weapons of terrifying power. "Captain," Neri called out. "On my mark, cut your engines and drop the shield. We need one moment of perfect stillness." Captain Miller nodded gravely. "Understood." He relayed the orders to the bridge. The 5 Veldari began to change their humming pattern. The sphere of energy around them pulsed faster, growing more concentrated. "Now!" Neri shouted. The ship's engines went silent. The Veldari released their shield, and in the same motion thrust their joined hands toward the Krell vessel. A beam of concentrated golden energy, tinged with red, shot forth from their circle. It struck the Krell ship directly in its core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then cracks of golden light spread across the Krell vessel's hull. It began to break apart from the inside, energy erupting from its seams. The Krell ship exploded in a blinding flash of light. On the observation deck, the Veldari collapsed to their knees, exhausted. Their skin dimmed to a pale blue, all energy spent. Ethan rushed to Neri's side. "Are you okay?" She looked up at him, her golden glow faded to just a faint shimmer. "Now you see," she whispered, "why we prefer to be shy." 3 days after the battle with the Krell, the USS Horizon limped toward Earth's nearest outpost, Starbase 7. The ship's engines were running at half power, and several sections remained sealed off due to hull damage. But they were alive, and they carried with them the beginning of humanity's most important alliance. Ethan stood in the ship's medical bay, watching as Dr. Kelly Fisher examined Neri. The other Veldari had recovered quickly after their energy expenditure, but Neri had remained weak, her skin a dull blue-gray that worried her companions. "How is she?" Ethan asked as Dr. Fisher reviewed her medical scanner. "Physically, she's improving," Dr. Fisher said, "but her energy patterns are still depleted. The Veldari physiology is fascinating. They actually store energy in cellular structures throughout their bodies." Neri sat up slowly on the examination table. Even in her weakened state, her presence commanded attention. I used more energy than the others, she explained. As defense minister, my training allows me to channel more power, but the recovery takes longer. You should rest, Dr. Fisher advised before leaving them alone. Ethan pulled up a chair beside Neri's bed. In the days since the attack, news of the shy aliens who saved the horizon had spread throughout the human fleet. The story had grown, with each telling, 5 Veldari defeating dozens of Krell warriors, creating shields out of thin air, destroying a warship with nothing but their joined hands. Your people are calling me a hero, Neri said, a hint of amusement in her voice. They should see me at Veldari council meetings. I'm the one who hides in the corner and speaks too quietly. Ethan smiled. I find that hard to believe now. It's true. Her skin momentarily flickered with a brighter blue. Using our energy like we did, it goes against centuries of cultural training. We're taught from childhood to contain, to withdraw, to hide our true power. Why hide something so useful? Neri's expression grew serious. Because it's dangerous, Ethan. What you saw was controlled, directed energy. But in our history there have been incidents, Veldari whose emotions caused energy discharges that destroyed entire cities. Our shyness is a safety mechanism. Before Ethan could respond, his communication device buzzed. Captain Miller's voice came through. Lieutenant Hayes, report to the briefing room. Admiral Clark has arrived from Starbase 7. On my way, sir. Ethan stood. Will you be okay? Neri nodded. Go. Duty calls. The briefing room was crowded when Ethan arrived. Captain Miller and Commander Bennett stood next to a stern-looking man with gray hair and an admiral's uniform decorated with numerous medals. Several other high-ranking officers filled the remaining seats. Ethan slipped into the back, feeling somewhat out of place. Lieutenant Hayes, Admiral Clark said, noticing his entrance. Just the man I wanted to see. All eyes turned to Ethan, sir. Ethan responded nervously. I've read the reports about your interaction with the Veldari, Admiral Clark continued. Quite impressive. The Fleet Command is creating a new position, official ambassador to the Veldari nation. The position is yours, if you want it. Ethan blinked in surprise. I'm honored, sir, but I'm not a diplomat by training. Admiral Clark smiled slightly. According to the Veldari defense minister, that's precisely why you're perfect for the job. She says you're a truth speaker, whatever that means. The meeting continued, with Admiral Clark laying out the details of a proposed alliance with the Veldari. Engineers from both species would work together to equip human ships with Veldari defensive technology. Joint defense stations would be established along the borders of Krell space. The Krell invasion fleet is still coming, Admiral. Clark reminded them. We have less than 2 months to prepare. This alliance may be our only hope. After the meeting, Ethan went looking for Neri. He found her on the observation deck, standing alone at the viewport. Her strength seemed to be returning. Her skin now showed patterns of gentle purple with occasional flashes of gold. I've been offered a job, Ethan said as he joined her. Ambassador to the Veldari. Neri turned to him. Will you accept? I'm considering it, but first I need to know something. Ethan leaned against the viewport. Why did my compliment matter so much? What was it about that moment that changed everything? Neri was quiet for a long moment, her skin rippling with thoughtful patterns. Veldari can sense intentions, she finally said. Not mind reading exactly, but we feel the energy behind words and actions. When I first came aboard your ship, I felt the rehearsed diplomatic pleasantries from your captain, your commander. They were saying what they thought we wanted to hear. Careful, calculated. And I wasn't? Ethan asked. Your compliment came from a place of genuine appreciation. No agenda, no calculation. Do you know how rare that is in interspecies diplomacy? Her skin brightened. In that moment, I knew you saw me. Not just the shy alien diplomat, but me. She touched the fabric of her robe, tracing one of the intricate patterns. These stories I wear, they're my family's history. The pattern here shows how my great-grandmother stood alone against raiders who threatened our colony. This one tells of my father's work healing the sick during the Great Plague. I wear them to remind myself who I am, where I come from. But no one ever sees them as anything but decorative. Until I did, Ethan said, understanding dawning. Until you did, she confirmed. That's why I made you a truth speaker. Not because you say what is diplomatic or convenient, but because you see what is real. 2 weeks later, the USS Horizon reached Earth. By then, preparations for the coming Krell invasion were well underway. The Veldari High Council had officially approved the alliance and sent 12 of their most advanced ships to join Earth's defense fleet. Ethan, now officially Ambassador Hayes, stood in Earth's orbital defense station alongside Neri. Through the massive viewport, they watched as human engineers worked alongside Veldari technicians, installing the golden energy projectors that would create a planetary shield. Will it be enough? Ethan asked. It will have to be, Neri replied. Her skin had fully recovered, once again showing the beautiful patterns of blue and purple, with occasional flashes of gold when she looked at Ethan. The Krell have never faced a united Veldari human force before. A month later, the Krell invasion fleet arrived, 50 warships strong, their weapons charged and ready. They expected to find Earth defenseless. Instead, they found 20 human ships and 12 Veldari vessels waiting for them. And when they fired their first shots, they discovered their biggest surprise: golden energy shields that absorbed their attacks without damage. The battle was fierce but brief. The Krell, faced with technology they couldn't overcome, retreated to the edges of the system. It wasn't a final victory, the war would continue. But Earth had survived its first real test against the Krell Empire. After the battle, Ethan found Neri in their usual spot on the observation deck of the defense station. She was speaking with several Veldari officers, her demeanor more confident than he'd ever seen. When she noticed Ethan, she excused herself and joined him. Ambassador Hayes, she greeted him with what he now recognized as a Veldari smile, a subtle brightening of the skin around her eyes. Defense Minister, he replied with a smile of his own. I heard the Krell commander called for a ceasefire. Is it true? For now, she said. They're not used to losing, it confuses them. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Earth rotate slowly below them. After a while, Neri spoke again. Do you know what we say before battle? She asked. In my language, it translates roughly to "we see your truth." It means we acknowledge the authentic worth of what we're fighting to protect. Ethan nodded. I like that. Before we met humans, before I met you, many of my people believed we should remain hidden, that revealing ourselves to the galaxy again was too dangerous. She turned to face him fully. But sometimes the most powerful thing isn't hiding your truth, but sharing it with someone who can truly see it. Her skin glowed golden in the starlight as she added, That day when you complimented my robe, you taught me something important, Ethan Hayes. What's that? He asked. That sometimes the greatest diplomatic tool isn't grand speeches or careful negotiation. Her golden glow intensified. Sometimes it's simply seeing someone for who they truly are, and being brave enough to say it out loud. Ethan smiled as he looked out at the stars. The Krell were still out there, and the alliance between humans and Veldari was still new and fragile. There would be challenges ahead, diplomatic crises to navigate, battles to fight. But as he stood beside Neri, watching her skin shimmer with patterns of gold and blue, he thought perhaps they had found the most important foundation for facing those challenges together, the simple courage to see each other's truth. By the way, he said, I still think your robe tells beautiful stories. Neri's skin glowed brighter than all the stars.